Hi, my name is Professor Charlie Wheelan. Sorry I can't be with you in person today, but I've been detained in a foreign country. That is literally true. I'm hoping that I'll be with you on Wednesday. I want to frame my participation in the course with just a few quick remarks. The first is, as you may know, I teach in the Rockefeller Center, I teach public policy. More important, I define public policy as communal decision making. It's when we as a society or any other group have to make some communal decision that is binding on those who disagree. So, for example, a trivial example, if we were to order lunch in this room and say, look, it's last minute, we can only have one thing to eat, we'd have to figure out there's some people who like meat, some people don't like meat, some people have food allergies. It would actually not be a particularly easy process. But we say, look, we have to, as a group, agree on one lunch that we're going to have. And if you don't like it, that's still what you're going to get. And we might even extend the analogy and say, and you're going to have to pay for it whether you like it or not. That is not an inapt comparison to the way a democratic society works. Communal decisions that are less trivial are very difficult. We have to decide as a society, for example, whether abortion is going to be legal or illegal. You're not unaware of what's happening in Texas right now. We have to decide whether we're going to invade a foreign country, Iraq, Afghanistan, and then 20 years later, we have to make a communal decision to withdraw because we have a single military. And we, 330 million people, have to somehow make those decisions. So obviously, if it's hard to get 60 people to agree on what we're going to have for lunch, we should not expect it to be easy for 330 million people to agree on much of anything. But what is capitalism and the future of capitalism other than a series of communal decisions around private property, around marginal tax rates, around regulating certain industries, around deregulating certain industries, where we've kind of made a communal decision that you need a license to do something. We may make a communal decision to say, you know what, you shouldn't need a license to do that because it's preventing people from doing jobs that they would be very good at. So to go back to where I started, why in the world would we ever expect the decisions around capitalism to be easy? And that's my first point here, is it's hard. Any communal decision is hard if it involves substantive disagreement, and of course capitalism does, and if it involves a lot of people, 330 million people is a lot. And so I would invite you to look around the world and put this challenge in context by looking at how the economic systems in other places are functioning. If you were to throw a dart at a map of the world, you might hit Russia just by dint of the size of the country. Well, Russia is a place that had a revolution, literally, in the early 1900s, where they cast aside their economic system. You had the Soviet Union, which was in turn overthrown in the early 90s after the Berlin Wall collapsed. So certainly Russia has had challenges around communal decision-making and its economic system. China is going through a unique period where you have an autocratic decision-making process grafted on a more or less market-based system. Africa is a place where for my entire lifetime there's been a struggle to find an economic system that can deliver the prosperity that should be possible on that continent. South America has known all kinds of challenges, with Venezuela being an example. Cuba would be another place that has seen all kinds of changes. So we look around the world and see that we're not the only one struggling with economic decisions. And one might argue that in many empirical ways, the United States is doing better than other places. Doesn't mean that there's not widespread disaffection, but I want to put it in context both with the rest of the world and this notion that communal decisions are going to be hard in an economic context. I also want to point out that you are living through a unique period of time. Now, it's always true that any class that graduates from Dartmouth is going out into a world that's different than the world that I graduated into. But your cohort has lived through a number of things that are going to have widespread implications. The financial crisis that began in 2008, we still have not fully reconciled ourselves to the economic challenges that or changes that have to take place to deal with that dislocation. COVID obviously has changed things regarding the workforce, our relationship with service workers, all kinds of things related, even where we choose to live and the like. Technology, you may take things like Facebook and Google for granted. The reality is that we as a society have not fully gotten our heads around how we ought to regulate those industries. They have near monopoly power. That's something we have to wrestle with, in addition to all of the possibility that those technologies present. And of course, related to that is a degree of income inequality that may not be unprecedented. Doug will have to tell you whether the Gilded Age there was actually more inequality, but it's unequivocally true that there is an extraordinary degree of income inequality that we are all forced to confront every day, from the extraordinary wealth of a Jeff Bezos to our shocking homeless population. And that is something that is going to force a political and economic change of some sort. We just don't know exactly what it's going to be, and that's what this class is going to be about. I would also point out that every time we've gone through some kind of unique period like this, whether it's World War II, whether it's the Great Depression, there's usually a wave of social and economic change that follows it. So, for example, the Great Depression led to the New Deal and a host of major changes in the way the United States government operated, and particularly our social safety net and other things like that. So we should expect that following this unique period of time, COVID and the financial crisis and our technology, the massive technological change, that there is going to be a wave of responses. And that's much of what we're going to talk about. I'll add two things to close. The first is you're also, unfortunately, living through a wave of political polarization that is not unique in American history, but the last time we were this polarized, one might say, that led to the Civil War. But that means there's two things that I want to remark on. One is that the political polarization is in part a response to what's happening on the economic front. There are people who are deeply disaffected with on the left and the right in terms of the way that the economic system is treating them and people they care about. But it also means that those communal decisions that I spoke about at the beginning will be all the harder because we are getting worse, or at least not better, at making communal decisions. So there is a connection that I will try and make between what's happening on the political front and what is happening on the economic front, and we'll try and weave those things together in this course. Last, on a personal note, I'm a member of the Dartmouth class of 1988. That's relevant in part, I guess, on a sentimental note, because for those of you who are first years, I remember my first day of Dartmouth classes. I was sitting, if not literally where you're sitting, metaphorically, I remember beginning at Dartmouth. But more importantly, in 1987, so the year before I graduated, I traveled in the Soviet Union and saw the last gasps of communism. And then in 89, only 1 year after I graduated, the Berlin Wall came down and a whole series of changes were ushered in. So that was my context in leaving Dartmouth, and I think that you're going to live through something that will be equally important. We just don't know what it's going to be. Those are the kinds of things we're going to talk about during the term. I'm really looking forward to it. It's fun to be able to teach with Doug and Russ. Hopefully we can share our overlapping experiences. I know that what we're discussing is of enormous importance, so I look forward to that and sharing your disparate and hopefully overlapping experiences as we explore this topic. So I look forward to getting started. I hope that I will be released from this country and can be with you later in the week. In the meantime, I look forward to getting started.